All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're looking at something that is so much more than just a heavy piece of carved rock sitting behind glass in a museum. We're exploring the Rosetta Stone. But, we aren't just going to look at it as some dusty historical artifact. Instead, we're going to use this explainer to view the stone as a mental model, a really profound framework for unlocking those absolute, completely frustrating dead ends we all inevitably face in our own lives.
So, I want you to start by asking yourself this pretty provocative question. What happens when an entire culture just loses its voice? Completely. Because by the 7th century, the ancient Egyptian language had basically become obsolete. For over 1,400 years, those breathtaking hieroglyphs carved into towering pyramids and temple walls went entirely silent. They were essentially a giant, uncrackable, locked door. People just assumed they were mystical, magical symbols. An entire civilization's history, their massive triumphs, their daily lives, all of it was completely shut off from the rest of humanity.
And that's exactly what this explainer is all about today. Think of it as a fireside journey into how we actually find the keys to unlock the seemingly impossible. That journey officially kicked off in July of 1799, when a French soldier in Napoleon's army, who was just working on a rundown fort near the town of Rosetta, literally stumbled upon a black granodiorite slab. This weird, irregularly shaped stone had fragments of passages written in 3 totally different scripts. Basically, it was 3 distinct keyholes to that massive ancient stone door. All right, let's move into part 1, the context, the ancient puzzle. Before we get bogged down in all the ancient dates, I want to introduce a guiding philosophy for our journey today, something we like to call Papa's Take. To truly decipher the mysteries of history, and honestly, the mysteries of our own lives, we have to remain humble and curious to look for the Rosetta Stones that pop up in our own lives, opening a new world of discovery. And to do that, well, it requires grounding. It requires drawing on the ancestral wisdom of those who came before us, like my father, Papa Cubair, combined with the supportive, illuminating companionship of a spouse along the way, like Colonel Debs. That specific mindset of humble curiosity, that is exactly what was required to crack the stone. The sheer, staggering scale of time we're dealing with here is just wild. Hieroglyphs originated way back around 3100 BCE. Now, the Rosetta Stone itself was carved in 196 BCE, during the reign of King Ptolemy V. To put that into perspective for you, Cleopatra's reign is actually closer in time to the year 2022 than it is to when the Great Pyramids were built. The stone just sat there completely hidden until 1799, and it wasn't fully deciphered until 1822. So this single slab of rock was literally a bridge spanning thousands of years of human history. Now, the actual text carved into the stone was essentially a piece of political propaganda honoring the king. But the really crucial point is how it was written. The priests ordered this decree to be inscribed in 3 different scripts. You had hieroglyphs, which were the words of the gods used by priests, Demotic, which was kind of a shorthand script used by the general public, and ancient Greek. Think of it roughly like 3 different people watching the exact same movie, but writing down 3 completely different summaries with slight local variations. Because scholars in the 19th century could already read ancient Greek, they finally had a way to read the movie summary and compare it directly to those unknown scripts.
Which brings us to part 2, the tension, the decipherment race.
Finding the stone sparked a totally agonizing 20-year race between scholars to decode a language that had been dead for almost 2 millennia. The initial assumption for a long time was that hieroglyphs were purely symbolic, just ideographic pictures with deep mystical meanings. But even when scholars realized the Greek text matched the Egyptian text, they faced a massive hurdle. Let's say you could somehow sound out the symbols. It would be like a future human sounding out the English letters C-A-T. How could they possibly know those ancient sounds meant a furry little animal with whiskers? Without actually knowing the underlying spoken language, the sounds meant absolutely nothing. And this sets the stage for a fierce, almost cinematic rivalry between 2 truly brilliant minds. On one side, we have Thomas Young, an English polymath and physicist. For him, the Rosetta Stone was just a casual, logical, mathematical puzzle he tinkered with in his spare time. On the other side, we have the French philologist Jean-François Champollion. His approach couldn't have been more different. He was obsessive, deeply immersive, and driven by a desperate, burning desire to understand the ancient Egyptian culture, not just solve a riddle.
Now, it was actually the Englishman, Thomas Young, who hit on the first massive logical breakthrough. He focused his incredibly mathematical mind on the cartouche, which is an oval frame surrounding specific sets of hieroglyphs. Young realized that foreign names, like the Greek king Ptolemy, couldn't be represented by traditional Egyptian concept symbols. So he correctly guessed that the hieroglyphs inside these ovals had to be spelled out phonetically. Young proved that hieroglyphs actually could represent sounds, at least for foreign names.
But, Young kind of stopped there. He completely refused to believe that native Egyptian words were phonetic too. And that is where Champollion took the final breathtaking leap. This is what brilliantly illustrates the absolute power of immersion. Champollion was completely fluent in Coptic, which was a surviving liturgical language used by the Coptic Christian Church, and it was actually a direct descendant of ancient Egyptian. He used Coptic like a glowing linguistic bridge. He realized that a cartouche from another temple spelling out Ramses, which is a native Egyptian name, was also phonetic. He sounded it out, connected it directly to his deep knowledge of Coptic, and realized that the underlying language of the hieroglyphs was in fact the spoken Egyptian language.
The moment it all finally clicked for him was just overwhelming. In September of 1822, Champollion sprinted to his brother's office in Paris, burst through the doors, threw his manuscripts onto the desk, and shouted that he finally had it. And then, according to the legend, the sheer exhaustion of this massive obsessive quest completely overtook him, and he collapsed into a dead faint for 5 straight days. But he had done it. He had finally cracked the code.
Let's move into part 3. The connection, translating daily life.
Because, let's be real, we all face hieroglyphs in our own daily lives, right? We face these completely unreadable situations, incredibly complex relationships, or professional dead ends that seem totally impossible to decode. They look like a tangled, confusing web of lines, and we feel like we're just staring at a dead language with absolutely no translation in sight. We assume the problem is too mystical, too complex, or just entirely unsolvable.
And this is exactly where we got to loop back to Papa's take. When we're navigating these deeply uncharted, unreadable forests in our own lives, we really can't do it with just raw intellect. We need the deep ancestral grounding of a Papa Q-Bear to remind us of the enduring human spirit. And we need the illuminating warmth and the active companionship of a Colonel Debs to keep us moving forward when we just want to faint from the exhaustion of it all. We have to remain humbly curious, meticulously searching for our own Rosetta Stones that can suddenly untangle that web for us.
Which brings us to our final section, part 4, the synthesis, lessons from the stone.
So, what are the big takeaways from this explainer today? First, deciphering the unknown is absolutely a marathon, it is not a sprint. I mean, people thought this stone would take 2 weeks to decode. It took 20 years, so be patient with your own dead ends. Second, breakthroughs require both logical framing, like Thomas Young's mathematical approach, and passionate immersion, like Champollion's deep cultural dive. You really need both to succeed. And third, the key to unlocking the present so often lies in finding the surviving threads of the past, just like Coptic was the bridge to ancient Egypt.
Just a single, tiny discovery can send ripples outward that completely change how we view absolutely everything. Whole areas of history were suddenly revealed to us simply because 2 men refused to stop looking at a rock. By embracing that guiding philosophy, we remember that we have to remain humble and curious to look for the Rosetta Stones that pop up in our own lives, opening an entirely new world of discovery. The keys are out there, often disguised as just mundane, broken fragments.
So I'm going to leave you with this final thought today. Look around at the impossible puzzles in your own world right now. What unreadable script in your own life is just waiting for you to find the right key? Keep searching, stay passionately curious, and never, ever assume the door is locked forever.